Testing.
Okay, so to forward everyone who's here early.
Recording in progress.
Welcome all to the Palo Alto Historic Resources Reconnaissance Survey Community Meeting. This is our second. Some of you may have been here the first meeting back in April, I believe. And we have member of the Historic Resources Board. To my left is our chair.
Hi, I'm Alyssa Sintislevich. Thank you for coming this evening.
And then we have three more members, the HRB over here.
Christian Keys.
Caroline,
Okay, so that's a quorum. 4 out of 7 have 7 members of our Historic Resources Board. So I'm Amy French. I'm the Chief Planning Official and the liaison to the Historic Resources Board, among other hats. To my right, we have Ian Dykus. She's the page intern, our consultant, qualified historic preservation consultants. And to right, Barrett, writer. I don't know if I said it right. Yeah. Also with Page and Turnbull. And have Isabel Castellano with M Group, who's helping us with outreach. We have seen her name written for conversations that we're going to be having with property owners. And Christina Skate with the City of Palo Alto. She's helping us with all of the historic program projects that come through and resource evaluations. And Veronica Dow, who is helping with this and all of the other the planning event holds in public forum. So yeah, thank you for coming and welcome. I guess at some point we'll know who.
One of us should be there. That's what I mean. I have a flat card, can locate there. I don't even know what to read.
Okay.
My head just swims.
Okay, maybe we'll take a moment at some point and do the
I don't know which property. It's not know mine. So
got it.
I like to go this one. You got a chance.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Just proceeding to now that we've done introductions and that you are here are most likely property owners received a notice or some such thing. We are going to have covering again the reason why we are here this evening and why we are doing a survey. I have other background information and cover another member of the HRB, Samantha Roman, vice chair. That walked in. So, we're going to be taught the survey findings, which we printed previously. We will describe the nomination memos process for nominations. We'll clarify the target dates for the HRB meetings to review the nomination recommendations. We'll explain the donation criteria. Then we'll get an opportunity to hear questions from the public and provide answers we can, and a little bit into incentives and some case studies of the incentives, so helping understand the significance of listing on the city's inventory. So with that, I will go next slide. I think we did introductions. Oh, and Rihad is not here, but she is on the list of folks. Agent Turnbull. So some of you may be familiar. The historic inventory that we have in the Palo Alto is from 1979. That inventory includes the Professorville district south of here. It includes individually properties, category 1, 2, 3, and 4 throughout the city. More in the part of the city, of course, but there are some farther down. And we have a couple of historic districts that are listed on our inventory, including Professorville, as I know. And then there are some individual buildings on the National Register in Palo Alto. So online, we have those on our web page, so you can look at the list of addresses, and there's also the forms from that original 1979 inventory. So that happened in 1997 through 2001 is we had another survey. Typically cities that are historic, have properties who surveys much more often than we do them here. But ours are pretty well spaced apart at this point. So this was this process did involve a consultant. And the result was that 165 properties were found to be for the National Register. So these are the same properties that we're looking at now that were identified 20 plus years ago. And a few more besides that are California Register eligible that were studied since that time. So there were in those DP forms provided at that time were historic context in Palo Alto and it provide a background. So there were forms, the deep forms for each of the properties. there was also a report, a study that kind of talked to the context of Palo Alto in historic development. So here was our purpose. So council headed direction to staff and the HRB to take a look at these same properties that had surfaced in the year 2000 and forwarded at that time to the Office of Historic Preservation at state level. So to see if they're still there, are they still existing? To see what the integrity is, see if they're still eligible for being on a register. And furthermore, to bring the properties forward that could be eligible for the city's inventory, the city's local register. So we wanted to learn. So that was the first part of this. I think this might be my last slide. I'm winding down. That we're trying to verify the presence of the properties identified individually eligible for the California register. This happened subsequent that 1987 to 2000 survey. We've been looking at other properties as a result of their comprehensive plan policy. It's detailed there, but again, come forward with recommendations for nomination at level category 1, 3, 4, nothing on the city's inventory. So there's a map that shows where all of these are. So over to you, Christine.
So that's a little summary of a recap from our first community meeting. As Amy said, we are looking at properties that were previously identified as historically significant for either the National Register of Historic Places or the California Register of Historical Resources. So we're taking another look at all of those. And then because they've been found historically significant, if we continue with that, and they still exist, have been demolished since 2001, we're nominating them to the local inventory, and there are benefit incentives to being local inventory, which we're talking about later in this presentation. So we've already done the survey. We went out and looked at each of these properties for public right-of-way, street, a few months ago. And so there were 165 properties that were identified as National Register eligible. 11 were actually previously listed in the Palo Alto Historic Inventory in the intervening years, or actually I think before that. They were already on local register and they were after that eligible for the National Register. So we're not looking at this again. 11 had been demolished in the last 20 so years. And then we saw that 4 have been significantly altered and have lost what we call integrity. So they've been changed such that they don't represent their period of historic significance anymore. So that led 139 National Register eligible properties. And then on top of that, 11 properties that were identified in historic resource evaluations in more recent years as eligible for listing California Register of Historical Resources. And these ones we found to remain present and appear to retain historic integrity from what we could see from the street. And historic integrity, as I just said, is the ability of a property to convey its historic significance through its physical characteristics. So that's what we were looking at when we were out conducting the survey on the street. A little bit of information here. This is high level in case anybody else on. We'll be going into case studies of some of these benefits in the later part of this presentation, but we do want to present some of the benefits and if you can consider drawbacks or either being listed on the Palo Alto Historic Register. This pro-con was listed in our first community meeting that we had back in the spring, so we wanted to present it here. So again, we'll talk a little bit more about what these things mean later, but we want to present it now. In the Palo Alto Preservation Ordinance, there are a number of benefits that are listed, and those include the application of California Historic Building Code that can provide some leniency during a proposed project and you have a historic building. In addition, the Palo Alto Building Code, Municipal Code offer some development incentives to assist owners, historic resources. Again, if you have some kind of project durations. R1 zone parcels that have 2 homes, one is listed as historic, can create a flag lot. Income producing properties may be able to apply for federal historic rehabilitation tax credits, which provide a tax break on your property income tax. And the Palo Alto Planning Department is available to provide essentially redesign guidance regarding proposed projects, and Paige and Joel helps with that of consultation when needed, when requested. And then Potential for property tax reduction incentive through the Mills Act program, which is another kind of tax benefit tax break. The council adopts program, and every city can decide if they want to have a Mills Act program and kind of tailor to that city. And the HRB is discussing this and the desire to create a Mills Act program for a while. So this is maybe a potential incentive for future. Drawbacks include a common fear about historic properties and review procedures, the concern that maybe there's an onerous process if you have alterations that you want to make. Major alterations or demolition may undergo review by the HRB, but it's only for certain types of products. But a general concern about that from property owners and environmental review or the California Environmental Quality Act may be required, and that could add a little bit of time and cost if you have a project. And then neither a benefit nor a drawback. If you have a historic property that's on the inventory, there's no requirement to restore your property back to what it appeared to be previously. No restrictions on interior alterations, and there are plenty of flexibility with change to other areas of the property. And you would be able to apply SB 9, which is one of the state housing laws that was passed in recent years, to single family residential zone property, which means that you'd be able to subdivide or create a duplex if you do have a historic property. So so it protects the historic property, but it means that you can't apply this kind of change to your property.
The rehabilitation tax credit, is there additional filings, like, do I need National Registry to apply for that, or is it just all to historically?
That's a great question. We'll be talking about that later, but I will briefly right now last that there is a process to first identify that it would be eligible for the National Register, which for these properties, these have started out by being found eligible for the National Register. Now we're just nominating them to the local register. So that should be a given that it would be eligible for the National Register. And then at the end of a federal tax credit project, you would need to actually designate the property as part of the process.
But then you would need listed as a national.
Yes.
Be subject to national requirement.
Well, in general, National Register is honorary, but you do this if you go through the process of applying. So there aren't any additional limitations for being the National Register, but we can talk about it a little bit later. We just wanted to share this first. So moving on, what we really focus on tonight is where we are now and what the next steps are. So we reviewed 150 properties for designation to Palo Alto Historic Inventory. Again, these were properties were previously identified for California Register or National Register criteria, and we have translated those criteria to apply to the Palo Alto Historic Inventory designation criteria, which are a little bit different, but we're going to walk through what that looks like in some later slides. We have created, or I guess we're in the process of creating memos that include a summary of those 2001 survey findings, a summary of our 2023 survey findings, whether the property still exists, where it still retains integrity, and a little bit of an assessment of whether the significance criteria identified in the 1997-2001 survey still relevant. A recommendation for designated criteria and categories of the Palo Alto Historic Inventory, and then we are going to append the prior historic evaluation to that memo. So the prior historic evaluation, the survey forms from 2001, those DPR forms, which is the California Department of Parks and Recreation, but basically the state's historic survey forms, and they have background historic information. They substantiate the significance statement. So we will end either that or the historic course evaluation was the basis of identification for significance in prior studies. Page and Turnbull received initial back from the HRB in, I guess, a month or two ago in a hearing regarding Palo Alto historic categories and how to associate them with the National Register and California Register criteria. So we moved forward after their agreement with our methodology. And the memos will be made available at least 1 week before each HRB hearing with HRB packet. It'll be posted online. So any property owner will have an opportunity to review material that has been collected and the significance finding out your property, and you'll know which hearing your property will be heard at for the HRB. We all have those lists handouts tonight. There's also a list post on the back window with dates and each party. And we'll talk a little bit more about how we came up with these lists, groupings of properties as we continue in the presentation.
What's HRB?
Historic Resources Board. Good question.
These good people here.
Yes, we have some members of the HRB with us tonight.
Sorry, mailing the forms to the owners? Are they just on?
Amy?
Let's start with the handouts over here. If not enough of them, we could some more available before. This shows the HRB meetings and the property address for which meeting. But we're going to be sending out notices to those for on deck for November 9th. The coming later this week, notices a link to where they can see the work that's been done. So we're say a week before, because when the packet goes to HRB, we are endeavoring to get that material out to owners early, so them to excuse me.
Amy, is it possible to mail the DP sheets to the owner so that it's clear what is going to be discussed?
We may be able to get that done in a couple of days. So it takes quite a bit of time to assemble pieces of paper. So hoping that the link will be sufficient for this week.
It will write a packet for every person every year. There is an introduction, several pages that describe the National Register and California Register criteria, and then the methodology for relating those to the local criteria, as well as what we're seeing here on the screen now, which is generally 1 to 2 pages for every property for the nomination memo, as I described in the last slide. I know it's very small here, but as I mentioned, it provides a summary of the 1997 to 2001 survey findings for National Register, or if property was found eligible for the California Register in a historic resource evaluation, is there instead. And then our conclusions from this 2023 reconnaissance survey, which is generally alterations, the property retained integrity, the property appear to retain its significance as identified in the previous studies. And then another page, a couple of images as well, and then another page that will outline which criteria for local inventory the property is significant under, and then the category. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more in detail, but there are 4 categories for the local inventory. And then appended to that nomination memo will be the original documentation. So either the 2001 DP forms, which are sometimes a few pages long, historic resource evaluation, which is off about 30 pages or more.
You said that the property that have been identified as historically significant prior to year 2001, that they have been reevaluated. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. This is the first time we're taking another look at these properties that in 1997 to 2001, during a citywide survey, 160 properties were identified as eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. We're looking at them again, confirming that they still retain historic significance. And because it has historic significance, they should be eligible for listing in the Palo Alto inventory. So our process now is to nominate them to the local inventory, which provides benefits and incentives for having historic resources.
Is that a process in place for people once that's nominated to be listed from the?
Well, we are going to focus on the next steps of the process right now, or in it.
Okay, so I'm going to go through a little bit of what's going to be in the background where you get that HR packet, and it's
Question, please, we can be asked the same question.
We would like to. Yeah, we would like to get through this process because we think you'll want to know what steps are, and then have a period of Q&A if you have questions about the process. And then after that Q&A, we're going to talk about in more depth about some of those incentives and benefits for being on the inventory, and then another Q&A at the end. So we can keep going.
okay. I'm going to cover what's there is background material on that packet that has a list. I know people are kind of flipping through and explain that, and then you get to kind of take with you and read through some more. So because all of the properties were previously identified as eligible for either the National Register or the California Register, we started with the 4 criteria of significance for both of those registers. They use the same criteria. California Register uses numbers, National Register uses letters. So see criteria National Register A, it's same as California Register 1. Those properties are significant under events, are associated with events that have made a significant contribution to the broad patterns of our history. And then for criteria B or 2, that is related to persons associated with the lives of significant persons or past. And then criteria E or 3 is related to architecture. Embodies distinctive characteristic of a type, period, region, or method of construction, represents the work of a master, or possesses high artistic values. And then criteria D or 4, we often call information potential, has yielded or may be like yield information important to history or history. One is usually more associated with geology or kind of the built structure itself, and no property are being discussed on D or 4, so kind of ignore that one. But the purpose of this, you really think about events, persons, and architecture, the 3 themes that these properties have previously been identified under. So then we looked at the Palo Historic Inventory criteria. There are 6 criteria, so it has a bit of a broader scope than the 4 for National Register and California Register. They're just kind of set up differently. So we inserted persons, events, and architecture in brackets within each of these. So it starts to you kind of where the overlap is. If you have a property that's identified as significant with a particular person, it would likely be significant under criteria 1, the Palo Alto inventory. So this allows us to correlate those different previously identified criteria with the Palo Alto inventory criteria. And you can see that they tend to focus on architecture. There are 4 related to architecture. So if you have a property that was found significant before under National Register criteria C for its architecture, it may be significant under criteria 2 and another criteria. Maybe it's a good example of an architectural style, and it was signed by a significant architect, and it's possibly listed on criteria 2 and 5. So you start to kind of see how these align. So once established this kind of correlation between the National and California Register and the local inventory criteria, we then onto these 4 categories that we've talked a lot about at a previous meeting, and we'll discuss here. Category 1 is an exceptional building of preeminent national or state importance. These buildings are various works of the architects, standing examples of a specific architectural style, illustrate stylistic development of architecture in the United States. These buildings have had either no exterior modifications, or such minor ones that the overall appearance of the building is in its original character. So we first approached these categories, we really kind of needed to create a threshold by which to fit in all these buildings across 4 categories. So one of the things that we presented to the HRB in August was our approach to creating those threshold groupings as we moved the properties into these different categories. Reviewed properties that are already listed, as well as really focused on the definitions. The threshold we created for category 1 was properties that were designated or constructed by prominent architect builders previously identified as significant or are excellent examples of a style. We also looked at the language in the category 1 definition that says preeminent national or importance. And that is where properties that are significant for events are like at a national level. We have one actually had an international impact. Those properties would also then kind of be updated to a category 1 because they meet that national or importance level. So category 2 is a major building of regional importance. These things are meritorious works of the best architects, outstanding example of an architectural style, or stylistic development architecture in the state or region. And we'll return to the region. A major building may have some exterior modifications, but the original character is retained. So here we have the major building categories. 4 categories we do focus on architectural significance of things. They don't fully correlate to the 6 criteria themselves. Those 6 criteria represent a broader swath of properties that include people, events, and rarity of a building, or fact that a business that was important to the once was there. There's one criteria about that. I think it's and so this is where we then started to create our threshold for category 2 to kind of broaden the definition outside of pure architecture and allow for the other rich stories about the history of Palo Alto to come into the actual story that we're preserving. So the threshold for category 2 is properties that are examples of a style or a rare building type. Associations with individuals are found to have made significant professional or personal accomplishments that demonstrate and enrich the history of Palo Alto are also represented under category 2. So that's where that person's significance comes. Then category 3 or 4 is contributing building with good local example of an architectural style and relates to the character of a neighbor grouping in scale, materials, proportion, or factors. A contributing building had extensive or permanent changes made to general design, such as inappropriate additions, extensive removal of architectural details, or wooden facades resurfaced in asbestos or stucco. So threshold for category 3 kind of sort of took a step back to contributing buildings as buildings sort of would contribute to like a historic district is often we would talk about it. Buildings that are part of the streetscape allow for the feel neighborhood to continue. And so our threshold for category 3, properties that are good examples of early development patterns or a common or typical buildings retain their historic integrity to a very high degree. Buildings are not particularly rare, but have very good to excellent historic integrity. And then category 4, it's very similar, but the integrity level has diminished. They've been altered to a higher degree and may have good to poor historic integrity. So buildings that are altered would kind of downgraded to a 4.
Just a little bit that sense, building not particularly rare, and very good to historic, just the.
Yeah. So they're not like the last one of its type. It's not like the only one that was built in Palo Alto. If a building is rare, it would like be a category 2 because it is like this last connection to either style, moment, or history of farming or something like that. Whereas with this, there would probably be a few type, and maybe not the most rare is one of the last that represents a development pattern. If that helps. Yeah.
You just said, I'm confused by what you said in category 1, is that threshold, if I look at things that are a lot oriented in architectural style. When I read criterion 1 in the city, it says structure sites inside the lives of direct people in person with importance when it's that's not to me the way you describe category 2.
Yes.
But so I'm just trying to get additional building, their toilets with best outstanding specific style. So that's how does category 1 vary from categories 3 and 4? And is I thought like category 1 when I first read it in the city thing was so with live and historic people, I thought, Herbert lived in the house, Steve Jobs in the house.
Yeah, so we have to separate category from criterion. So there's 6 criterion for historic inventory are what you could be eligible for having significance related to that criteria. But then once you have that criteria, you're going to be designated for, then you have category assigned. You can be a category 1 building that has international or national importance because of the person who lived there or architecture, or you could also still be the same criteria listing, but a category 2 because you only have state level significance. So there's kind of 2 steps. You have to select the criterion for designation and then the category that the property is designated under. So a 2-step thing.
Can I get a clarification?
Yeah.
So you're rewriting kind of the categories, but categories don't actually match the criteria.
We're
So
trying
there's
to,
a there's a problem there. So you've done that reading. What's the status of your writing? Has that approved by the HRB?
So that's
Or
what
is
took to
your-
HRB.
So
Yeah.
and they have said, cool, these are the new these are the new categories, or they just said, we'll about it.
I mean, I can let HRB speak to this if you or I can.
Yeah, so the question that was primarily for us had to do with the inclusion of specifically property related to historic persons. Because that was fully specified in category designation where a property with that particular criterion would go. So that when we approved the listing of those as category 2s, but my understanding is that the rest is unchanged.
Okay, so this you're presenting represents the HRB now view the current the categories.
Yes.
Okay.
So is the person there or is it the architect that designed? Is it, I'm just.
It's one could be.
There's an example, so in category 2, a major, so is category 1 national? What you said that category 1 is somebody nationally important and category 2 is regionally important? I don't understand the difference. I'm sorry, between category 1 and 2.
Yes, I think that's accurate. Yeah, and that's exactly what the description is
Mhm.
in the packet. Yeah.
Excuse me, that is very confusing. So, for a speculative question that, the house that occupied by Sergey on Google, would it have historic significance? And, because we are talking about people that there has internationally reputation. I'm just wondering, like, the residents of the government even Stanford.
Yeah.
Example. I mean.
Yeah, so significance of the person is one of the more difficult ones. I will say that for the properties that I looked at, there is no like Steve Jobs invented Apple in this building immediately internationally, don't have any of those. It's more people that were significant to local Palo Alto history. And so those are a lot of the properties that I worked on and went to figure out how long lived in a home. Is it the primary residence associated with their productive work, their professional accomplishment, personal accomplishments, and try to figure out whether this is that property or whether they moved every 2 years and lived in 10 properties, then this one probably doesn't rise to a level we would say it's significant.
Sure, if it is the case, what's the purpose of the local significance, country distribution is about, I'm just like, not very clear.
Yeah. So all of the properties that were significant for a person, I think to the most part were found to be under category 2, which is what we said was there would be done with this text. Good example of style association with individuals who are found to be significant personal accomplishments related to Palo Alto. So there wasn't anyone who's like nationally significant and we put that property up to category 1. They all kind of were at this level of low significance where either involved like civic accomplishments, Palo Alto, personal accomplishments of Palo Alto, have a Olympic athlete was very important, that kind of thing.
And again, this all historic information that was included in the 1997 to 2001 findings documentation. And so we're just verifying and then correlating the previously found for significance to the Palo Alto inventory criteria. All right, Amy, I think you're working the process.
I was reviewing the helpful handout to see, I know these are talking about categories. So I was looking at the January 11th hearing target date, and that has the properties found eligible for association with persons. That would be the date targeted to discuss those 20 properties. So are we on slide 16? I guess we are. So right now, as noted, we're on these nominating memos for each source. It's a page that would be appended to the existing study 1997 to 2000. And we have these handouts. You can find your address. I know a gentleman left that said didn't see his property on this list, and it might be because it's no longer eligible. So let's see. The nomination memos will be contained in the HRB packet. Noted, we push the packets a week before the HRB meeting. So when we say November 9th is our first meeting with these 68 properties, we're started the bang, lots of properties. And we'll be publishing that packet, the staff report with all of the materials online and giving us to the HRB. We will all be ahead of that, sending out letters to each of those property owners, 68 owners, with information about their property and the recommendation. So again, hope we'll get that out by the end of this week, so you have more than so I guess move on to the next slide. So then we'll get these HRB meetings.
Can I interrupt just sorry? But if somebody's computer's broken, can come down to City Hall and get a copy of the information.
Yeah, we're open at the Development Center Monday through Friday.
So would it be development or the city clerk? Just go to the development
clerk would not have this information.
Okay.
It would be somebody printing from the web page for them.
Okay.
And they can do that at the library if they want to print something.
Oh, good idea.
Right?
Yeah. And if there's staff they can call, they have questions about anything, because I
have our contact on the web page. If looking at the web page for the project, it does have name on there, and it has Isabella Castellanos' name as well. To send.
Also on the notices, Isabella's name will notice.
Yeah.
And I do want to mention to this group and to people in the audience for the Zoom meeting as well, that is part of the community outreach, being out to the individuals that are present today to talk a bit more about in detail of what your property is, how the eligibility falls on those criterias, and providing these DRs for your references. It was mentioned earlier that most likely it won't be mailed to individual properties because of the extensive pages related to it. We're also considering a sustainable approach to having these DPR readily available, accessing it through the counter office here in Palo Alto, and also communicate between Amy and myself. So that's part of the community outreach that we're providing for the group, and talk a little bit more to the end of the conversation. It's more of a communications, the properties are listed under these inventories. We'll reach to you at various stages to provide an update. And there is the opportunity to communicate with us to hear what your thoughts are on the nomination and how you're feeling about moving forward. So that's something that we're continuing to provide you during this whole process.
What about email?
Yes, through the emails. Once you fill the contact form on the project page, I'll receive notice and reach out to you directly. So that could be emphasized with a call or an email. We can also coordinate our meeting if there's a particular project related questions. So there is the planning detail opportunity there. So those are all different medias, but we're taking a sustainable approach, limiting the amount of materials, knowing that this is various pages related to each project, and willing to facilitate any technicals with the individual property owners.
So it's been great. We had people reach out by email and we've conversations. We've been some folks here with us to talk through their project. So, if you have a project in mind, we offer service through the planning to counsel on what is it that you're thinking of doing to your property as it relates to this, existing, eligibility, and this, listing and what differences are.
I'm a little unclear how are we going to get a cut in the mail with to the pack? Is that how it's going to? Or
yes, you'll get a cut in the mail, a letter. However, we have how we plan to do that. I'm not sure if it's a card letter, but we'll have where you can go. It's the web page that we have for the project, but it'll get you to that upload.
What is the web page?
did you get the card to come?
That's on the cards.
Yeah. So yeah, so we have maybe we'll some time looking web page before you all leave, or I can't roll it off on my tongue. Sorry, it's not a B, right? It's a Q. Yeah, it's reconnaissance. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, if I recommend just to the Palo Alto city website and putting in that search bar 2023 reconnaissance survey. There is a link related and located with historic resource board page, and we might be posting it through the city sites on potential hot topic. So we are trying to reach out and be transparent where the website information is, all the updates related to the project, and there will be continuous opportunities to reach out to us and communicate. So today is not this meeting. We'll continue to have conversations, and the notices will be announced to each hearing. So that's a normal process for any hearing on mailing through property owners.
Oh,
So it's another HRB hearing November 9th.
so that will be with the HRB looking at the properties that are listed on the handout that you're indicating. So if you find your ad on that page, front page here, and you will be receiving information, you'll be receiving a reminder, a notice about, the set there about that date. But mark your calendar. You can attend via or in person in the council chambers. So just we will get through the presentation so we can get an answer. So at these ARB hearings, meetings that we will be looking at all nominations as indicated attached and handout tonight. And then the plan to bring the recommendations of HRB together with the comments and input from the property owners to the city council for their consideration of placing these properties on local inventory, the category 1, 2, or 4. So, and that we're looking at the spring, next spring of 2024. So we're hoping to get full participation of each other to thoroughly review what they'll be looking at and comment. And so we can bring all of that, each and consider the and so can the council. So Then let's see. So this is basically a summary of this handout, which is that we found there are 68 properties that are eligible for architecture events, 9 for architecture only, 9 for events only, and 28 for persons. And then we have a couple of other types of properties there. And these are the dates for HRB. We noted architecture and events is on November 9th. Architecture separately and events separately for December 14th. Then January 11th would be those 20 properties for their persons, as well as the other categories, which are California registered properties, found more recent to be so. And there's 4 projects that are underway with construction that we're going to look at, see about eligibility. Just a side note that having construction on a historic property, they're still eligible unless the construction has completely, obliterated the facade or something. So, anyways. I think we're at the, hey, yes.
And maybe we can start with folks who are on
Zoom.
Zoom. We have seen you ask some questions. We want to make sure that we get to you. So there's a question, is there a way to see the list and the dates now? So those who aren't here in the room where we've had some handouts, we're going to be posting that list to the city's website on the page for this project. Is it there yet? Will it be there tomorrow? Okay, it'll be tomorrow. And then it would be helpful to be able to read our home DPR prior to meeting. Email link online, fine. Yeah, so the plan is that everyone will have an opportunity. We'll let you know when the information is available. You'll have at least a week to review the nomination form, the PR form from 2001 or HRE, Historic Resource Evaluation, depending on whatever that earlier documentation was. So you see the reason why originally found historically significant and the criteria category for the Delta inventory you're recommending in this effort. So you'll be able to see all the information and then provide comment ahead of time to the Asian portal on the web. You can attend the hearing, HRB hearing, to provide a verbal comment either virtually or in person, and you'll also have an opportunity to do so at the city council hearings when it goes to them. So HR provides a recommendation to the city council. Council makes the decision of which properties are designated.
So there information to all data you collect where you can your property down here, you can go and figure out you have put it in that designation. And is that available now?
Is your property, it's on second hearing list?
It's on. Well, no,
Turn on the-
no, on the first list.
Oh, it's on the first one. And it was previously identified.
I've done a lot of research.
Yeah.
And so I'm just curious what your criteria, what information that I don't know my own property.
It's from the DPR form from 1997, 2001, from the existing DPR form. And then whatever criteria it was eligible under. If it's within that first property, it would have been A and C.
So is that detail available?
Are the DPRs available?
It was sent to me, I just want to say, I didn't know that I had that question, why?
Yeah.
You know, what basis, and the first sent me the DPR.
We can send to you. That's the takeaway. I don't know if they're available posted somewhere on.
For the individual PRs for that detail that you asked, we can send it.
I should put the microphone.
Thank you. So that request for individual DPRs, part of the outreach that we can provide it to you with an email or over call, something that is available to further explain the nomination and eligibility. Part of the package that will be presented in advance to the HRB meeting will have description as the cover letter. So it's content that we're working on, and we're working to make that readily available for you. And this is occurring within the next couple of days, and as to the November 9th meeting. So I appreciate the responsiveness to look over individual property details, and we are willing to facilitate that, knowing that the HR meetings are coming in relatively quick for November, December, and working to put that available for you.
But I think if your DPR form as soon as possible, I think you could give us address and email and we can send it to you tomorrow. Yeah, it's a Department of Parks and Recreation, the official California format.
That's the old.
That's the old DPR.
You're not giving any new ones.
We'll give the new ones once they're posted all together. Yeah, otherwise I'd have to send them out if they're available.
And this meeting of 68 potential homeowners
We're jumping in with both feet and the biggest group of 68. So we're hoping that people will have a chance to read through the nomination memo. Is going to be a one-page memo that talks about the 1997 to 2000 DPR form that was done then, is proposing that this go forward because it's still eligible. So the owners would be able to comment on that, express concerns. It can be during the hearing, it can be in writing. Well, in fact, we're showing it. If you roll down, this is the page we're talking about, the project reconnaissance survey that you can do by pushing the search box. If you go down farther, see there's a form at the bottom. It has links to look at things. We'll be posting the packet here as well as on the HR page. If you look at the bottom, there the survey contact, and you can fill that out with your name and email or phone number if you choose, and just a call back, email back, and we will send you the DPR, send you whatever we've got already, and then you'll then when it's public see the that suggests which category.
I am just wondering, this is a huge impact to each individual property owners, and from what you described, I think it's fantastic if you would reach out to every one of them instead of owners having to come forward and request it. I don't know if people might not be living in homes or for some reason see the posters or letter.
Yeah.
I am just thinking maybe that's
It's true that everybody lives at home, right? We have owners that we're sending to that are not living in Palo Alto. So they get the card in the mail like you get card, but they're living on the East Coast or somewhere else, and it's remote for them. They don't think they want to participate. I don't know. Add their phone number, so we're hoping they're looking at the cards.
Am I right to think that it's up to the ARB and then the city whether go ahead with the designation, even
Yes.
if the property owner doesn't, or has either the city or the HRB said they are not going to do that, or is that something that happen? Are they going to deliberate about that?
So this will be something that is the reason we're at this juncture is because our ordinance, municipal code, chapter 1649, doesn't specify, who can nominate. It says anyone can nominate a party. So nomination is no big deal. We've had that recently. A citizen in Pelton nominated property that was not property. So that happened. But the decision point comes at the council. Council can receive recommendations for nominations. They can receive protesters from the property owners who don't want the inventory and consider all of that and make a decision. The HRB will have conversations about this. So if people submit their letters, comments, concerns, that's an opportunity even at these HRB meetings to talk about that.
So Amy, I think earlier you said that the city council was going to vote on this for city government.
Oh, that's just the first batch. The more there's 100 so we haven't talked through how that will go as far as how many meetings for the council, how that will go. Just at the first stages, which is to get before the HRB with the first batch, and we'll see if we can get through the first batch in this meeting. Yeah.
So again, can the city council modify the recommendations that you present?
They wouldn't modify the recommendation, but either say yes, we agree, or they would say we don't agree. And yes, they could end up a category 1. I think this is a category 4. I mean, they don't have the expertise necessarily do that. Sorry, but but I guess is that what I mean about modify the recommendation?
Can they remove?
Yeah, it wouldn't be removed because it's not on the inventory. It would be, to say we're not going to place that on the inventory. They could take the recommendation from the HRB. Let's say the HRB says you should put it on the inventory. Council sees it and says, well, we don't think this should go on the inventory. And that's decision. They're the decision maker.
Could you give a quick summary of happened in 90 stuff? Objected in 2001.
So I can do a little bit of history on it, and that was the subject of was part of the pack to the HRB last month, the very last meeting with the HRB, some historical materials. What happened back then was there was an interim ordinance and an interim process, and these list of eligible properties. There was also simultaneously a permanent ordinance, new ordinance that the council adopted. It went through an environmental impact report. It went to Planning and Transportation Commission. It went to City Council. Council approved it, and then it was overturned by petition and vote. So that's what happened. That ordinance. It's not the same ordinance we have today. That we have today is the one that was in place before all of that happened. So that's what's still in place today. No proposed ordinance coming with all of these properties. Now, that's not to say that in the future that ordinance, could change in the future, but we don't have a proposal to make change. But that there were to be a change to the ordinance, the city's municipal code, it would have to be a similar process, right? With environmental review commission.
One of my concerns
council.
with that last meeting
Yeah.
is that voters rejected this in 2001, moving forward with the process to designate those properties now for historic registry.
Right.
And then you're giving us the changes that either restrict or incentivize them to be on that registry. So we're making a decision before we know what the code is and what the incentives are. And many of the incentives that you've listed are if the city chooses to do the Mills Act, but you haven't to do the Mills Act, you
Correct.
rejected the Mills Act. So
Yeah.
we can't expect these from that program. I don't really understand how we can inform decision as property owners as to whether there is benefit or advantage to being designated as storage on the storage street. And if there's not, how can we avoid being designated? You're saying it's out of our control.
No, it's
City
not
gets to choose
well.
whether they designate or not. If we object, they still could choose to designate our property.
That's true. They could choose. But what I
I think you've been open about that.
right.
Part of
We
the
don't expect that the council would designate a property to the inventory, over objections of the property. And the reason I say this is because the state of California has a process, which we covered the last meeting. I think I heard it in the conversation, that if a property owner objects to being listed on California register, then they will not place it on the state register.
That was actually one of my points, the National Registry, the California Registry.
Right.
Will do that over the actual property owner.
Right.
So I'd like to, have some assurances of Palo Alto property that won't happen for the city registry.
Well, I'm not the council, but I like I say, I suspect they will look to what the state does, what the government does. But also say is that, with certain ordinance, there's quite a wide lay of some properties that are on the registry need to go to the Historic Resources Board and be reviewed, and there are recommendations. When the comes to the metal and you go to Defense Center, there are voluntary suggestions, if you will, and so don't really know that so much. We'd rather people follow the recommendations, but the way ordinance is currently written, it's not really effective for historic preservation. But it does set up a process. Okay, we have more, and I'm wondering, we want to turn on one of those that microphone so we can hear.
Yeah, so to follow on the question previously, if I want to choose by myself to draw the nomination, would it then be at the hearing to voice my concern? I would like to be withdrawn.
I think that'd be the first and earliest opportunity after having seen what the proposed.
Okay.
So you mentioned go down, so I had a neighbor and they looked on their parcel and there's some property designated as actually as eligible in 1997 or something, but it's and they weren't on the list. And I told them, I think for whatever reason, some people who in that category were designated. I guess part of my confusion is, and maybe to do with national, but there's a lot of properties in Palo Alto that at least in the description I saw meet the exact terms. It's just confused as to how one determines, like, the goal to say, well, Shakespeare wrote a lot of great plays and we're going to put every Shakespeare on. And how do you know whether you're putting probably the Pericles, Prince of Persia, but he wrote half of it and it's really not a play. And, how do you say either, well, we're saying as an example and someone's really that or that. So is there hope that have, like any kind of overall, well, we look what's on the inventory and we're trying to fill in gaps, like some.
No, that's not happening. What's happening is, again, we're just taking what all was done back in 1997 that kind of got to a point and determined eligible, which we're doing with the same properties. We determine them eligible, or there's been a number of them that have been loose because, right?
Just saying, the person, that friend of mine that and checked on parcel map on her.
That's potentially eligible, which is different from eligible. And I know it's confusing. Potentially eligible was a broader list of properties that was a windshield survey. And those did move forward in process like the ones that determined eligible in 1907. Those properties remain the potentially eligible because they are older than they were built before 1948 and there was no further study of them. That's why they say potentially eligible.
I wanted to build on. I'm so sorry.
Oh, she's had her hand.
On her comment, it's an example, a neighbor called me to council meeting. In plat, this is 896, and he's not on the inventory list, not on the 1997 2000 eligible survey, he's not part of the reconnaissance survey. His family is original homeowners, and they haven't made any changes, and he's not deemed eligible, anything.
Right.
You know, on the radar. Why is that? And I'm only asking this just to be an example, middle class home, and he's a middle class home, he's right. Near,
Right. So I don't know why his home was passed. Okay, first of all, the plaque. The plaque is given out for any home that over 100 years old. Doesn't matter. It's a great example of a certain style or poor example of a style. So that's that. That's the.
Yeah.
So it's given out by past the city. The second piece of that is, you know, why did Dane Moore, which was the prior consultant, not identify that as eligible? And I don't know. It might have, so it was never, you're telling me it was never potentially eligible either. And was there a lot of vegetation there that they couldn't see it when they drove by that first time, 1997? That's a possibility.
Why it's, there are houses that say that on the code report that, or whatever your report said, could not determine, could not be from the street. This wouldn't even make it, you know, on the list to be looked at so that cut would be made.
Right.
It's just fascinating that, well, it's the original owner, I think that's even more different.
Right.
He knows our history of the house, which is no building.
We would love to him.
Yes, me. Not give address then.
Okay.
Like, I'll be honest, I went in my neighborhood, 3-4 people, and which houses are the criteria that? No kids, the houses, the two that are on the water were not there, were like 5 that face that one. And I won't give those people addresses either, but it makes you wonder, it's like I said, is McDuffie on there? It makes you wonder about this, but that's it for no, just, you answer question, and that is that some other list, they were potential, they were, these people probably potential, and they were not, okay.
Right, but they still on the parcel report potentially eligible. Again, as they never made it to the eligible studied, there was a bush in the way and they couldn't see the whole thing, and that for is potentially eligible. We're not doing anything about those at this time. We're only dealing with the eligible ones.
Didn't have a good way, I wonder how more attractive house. Okay, but now explain that, it could be the same.
But more importantly, for someone like us, when we see that there are others that seem to be close to our equals, not designated, and we are the select on our block, then you get some, I guess, zoning inconsistency going on where everyone else on our block won't designated, we'll be that little house and up because these other people might bought out. But I'm thinking it's very unfortunate that it's a select list, it doesn't fully collect everyone, because it's people like us that this is not a good situation for us, even though we both love historic homes. We the historic home. I'm a historian. I studied history. I'm a genealogist. I love American homes. I love my town. I don't want the town destroy developers either. At the same time, I don't want to disadvantage in an extreme way to protect the town for everyone else's sake. And I feel like the city is not really giving us great incentives. I read the incentive list carefully. I know you still want to go over that. So I'm saying, from the homeowner perspective, I hope you understand that many of us want to participate, but we don't want to officially participate.
Understood.
I want to inject my personal feelings about preservation, and I'm glad that my house did not get demolished right before I did it. And it was on the list for developers looking at it, and they were going to take the house down and put 2 houses up. And I'm really grateful it survived. And I have my husband. This is a little building in town. It's you know, the fact that it's standing is miraculous. It's next to the bowling alley on Emerson, if you know where the Indians were. But I'm really glad that it had a life, allowed it to come into my hands. It's the one property that kids would like to hold on to. It's there's something about old houses. Yes, we love them. Our property market is so bizarre now and so competitive that somebody who's not looking at an old house could buy a house that's not protected, which none of us are, and say that. But yeah, but I think it's an advantage to maintain these property we love. And if anybody can buy it and their motivation is just land, then those houses that have so much soul will be gone. So I think that we are all preservationists. Most of us who live in old houses are preservation at heart. And I think it's unfortunate that there's fear associated with being on this list, which is pretty benign. But hopefully I'll do therapy and work it out and we'll get through it.
So I got a number. We'll start here first, or if
And
that's
then do you
okay.
want to move to the
Yeah.
presentation after the three?
We have to,
And then
we have
we'll have
four,
Q&A.
1, 2, so.
We're kind of on the side of the spectrum. Those people that have, for those that are on the list and want to take advantage of benefits and entitlements, incentives.
Use the microphone.
So if we want to take advantage of the benefits and incentives, and how would the timing work? And it's that if it's a project it's a house that's planning a project and they want to take advantage of those incentives and it's nominated or moving forward, and by all practical purposes, it's going to be put on the list. It'd be done concurrently. Those incentives be realized or incorporated into the work currently while it's being approved or going to HRB. How will that review work? How will that particular?
Well, just not get too specific, but see this property on the first list?
It would be January 11th.
Oh. Okay.
Very
So it'd be easier for the first meeting.
Yeah.
To say, I mean, we, of course, we hadn't thought of this, what to do. Somebody's super eager to be on the inventory. I mean, we do a nomination, we do have the ability to property owned by request of the owner, nominate their own property. And bring that forward specifically. I don't know.
We don't know how long the planning process works, but it's
Yeah.
going that process and working it in. We plan these incentives in is the main question.
I think it's a pretty good bet for you to, if you want to be on the register, the council will grant your wish, is what I say. I don't know what category you are, but I probably we'll see. Yeah, per something. Okay, so it's the likelihood if you want an inventory, the council will will say yes to that, because we want people that want to preserve their homes. Right? So you can start with your ideas on your architecture drawings. Bring it in. We'll start talking about that. Yeah, and get you going.
Can you clarify the relationship between S5 and the designation? SB5 is the state that pretty much nullifies all local zoning rules. SB9 is a not.
So there's S9, which enables lot splits of single-family residential property and provision of up to 4 homes on a family residential property by way of split and a primary unit and BU on each duplex.
What's the relationship between those provisions?
Yeah.
And what say are the benefits of some being in this designation list to protect you from it?
So if
tested, is there an exception?
So you wanted to an SB9, if you are single family zoned property and you have started down the path of doing an S9 project, and that's your goal, we're not going to stop you from that. If you file tomorrow with the Development Center for an S9 property, even though you're eligible, right? Yeah. So the other way around is if you wanted to, right now, the only lots incentive, if that's the part of SB9 you're interested in. So we have two parts of SB9. Some people use SB9 to avoid the individual review process and do a second unit on their property and just have a building permit only. That's one people use SB9. But the other way is to split. So we do have a provision right now for a lot split historic property. But if you have a historic home that's on the inventory, which none of your homes are because they're just eligible. But if it's on the inventory, there's you can flag lot in an R zone. It's a little bit complicated to go tonight, but if that's your interest, I'm happy to talk to you about that.
It's not like any owner, because I'm just curious whether that would create a disincentive of potential.
Yes, if somebody comes along and they want to subdivide the lot that you have, and it's say, 1,000 square feet. Yeah. Let's say if it's 10,000 square feet, likelihood that they can come along and do a lot split is high because SB9, certainly right now. But if it's on the list for historic, SB9 does not, historic properties are exempt from SB9's law. So you can be able to do an SB project.
All right. Well,
Right.
one last thing, you had a great slide at the beginning that showed the benefits and risks and so forth.
Mhm.
I'd love to see the again or a
Right.
copy of it, if you can make it available on
next slide.
some type of like
SB9 only applies for R1s.
Well, R1s
this is
or
a slide.
yeah, R1 zones or RE, which is also single family. It does not apply to R2 zones. It does not apply to RMD, which is a multifamily, or R2. So if you are any of the zones, SB9, you can't use SB9 to do the project.
There are a lot of RD, R2s on this historic list.
Mhm.
I'd just like to say that a city's goal is to stop SB9 going overboard.
Yeah.
Then this is not the best list too.
Right. I don't think it's our goal to stop SB9. In fact, we need to embrace SB9 because the state law that we can really not push back against at this point. But we are, so we stand ready with ministerial process for SB9s. So this is the reason it's connected to S9 is I think that was a catalyst to, again, call attention to the fact that we have these properties sitting out there as eligible. But yes, there are quite a few that are not R1.
Oh, sorry.
Get an order, yeah, sorry. I'm a very good moderator. Who is?
Well, I just have a request. I'm pretty confident there are many properties that are not ended up being honored. And just to, I don't really want to go to a meeting in a couple of weeks, be upset about the possibility of property being nominated. At least HRB and the council to discuss in advance what to do. And if they're not willing, try to get the homeowner to just tell us. And so we can just easily, we're not interested, have that be that. And it's crazy, we're in the situation we're in right now, talking. So you should have worked it out in advance, what you were willing to do. But here we are, sitting here, and you don't know.
It's because I'm not city council.
I know.
Go to the city council and ask them.
So you would prefer to cut this whole process out and not move forward with this nomination process with careful looking at each property. You'd rather just say we don't want anything nominated or.
There are, I'm not the only person that would just like drop now and we all move on.
Well, I ask that you, if you're on the first list, are you on this list? Your property, you soon will be getting thing in the mail that helps you to understand what it at that point can better do what you need to express yourself about the results. We haven't seen the results yet.
Let's just say that he doesn't be on this, or that he doesn't want his house to be.
That's absolutely something anyone can do.
Yeah.
But I was asked that you receive the work that's been done because we've been at it for it and we're ready, at the point with at least the first to get those letters so they can have final think. I suppose you're against it from the start, understand that, but this will be information.
Amy, clear, does the homeowner writing a letter or using form online or an email be sufficient to say, I request the council HRB to remove my home from this list, do not want to be included in the process? Or do they need to quickly come to council chambers for the HRB meeting and city council meeting?
Do not need to, nobody needs to
Great.
physically be anywhere.
A letter
hearing.
is sufficient.
Correct.
We'll understand your wishes to be removed if a letter comes through, and that will be considered in each of meetings individually for that.
Right. In fact, if without even looking at the letter, as you seem to, that you just want in the letter tomorrow, then the letter tomorrow. That's your wish.
You're looking for a letter?
If you would send a letter, any point, you may send a letter. No, to for this process, we have form, but you could certainly send to.
If I may.
They're quite ready to receive a bunch of letters right now because, yeah.
Governance, I mean, I think it is, I'm gonna interpret, but this is a very painful process. We all have spent hours going to documents, going to benefits, discussing the benefits and understand the benefit. Is that a benefit? Is that a benefit to you? Which is, so many of us invested hours respecting us on your website. I know we said it wasn't clear. Went back, all set up several, got our DPRs, etc. And it's painful.
Sure, yeah, you're in pain.
The question is, you know in advance what governance process, this isn't pointing at anybody, it's saying is the decision making process, is it unknown or do?
No, it's known, it's known.
But no, the question is, does council already know that they would support an owner and over?
We not asked them directly, this question. However, I understand that. However, what I'm suggesting is that this very November 9th, your letter will be in the packets. No, thank, and the AD will be looking at each property and see, no, thank you first. And you've done what you need to do. And it, you know, you can express yourself.
Me.
HRB can still say.
Yeah.
You know, your property is so special that you're willing to
Override.
you know, override the wishes. That's what we're getting at.
How many
That's
people on
clearly
board? I have heard that.
clearly
How many
communicated
people on
whether or
council?
not that's.
There's 7 members on council and one of us here.
From the 7-member council, and it's surely 4 of those people are gonna say, respect your wishes. Just a concern, so.
Yeah. Yeah. So closing, when can you send a letter now? Who do you send to? Amy French or Isabella Casano? You know, mail, it all works. You know, if you have to send it certified, but you know, if you send an email, I will respond back. I read your letter. Thank you much. We'll put this in the packet. And so when the AD receives their packet, they see your letter. That's what I can guarantee.
Thank you. My name's Charlie. I really like to associate myself with remarks of this gentleman. Sorry, I don't know your name. And I think it's ironic that we're here talking about history, and I guess we're with the HRB. And what I'm missing from your initial presentation when you were laying out the history of this process is something to me that it speaks precisely the point that you're raising. And that is that in the period, really, I think it's 97 to 2000, there was a very, very, very divisive set of there was a series of campaigns, there was a divisive process that happened in Palo Alto. And sometimes we talk about what creates divisiveness. And I think people don't realize the history, because at that time, the council started with a list of about 2,000 properties and eventually whittled it down to about 700. They were going to designate, they changed the ordinance. They changed the ordinance in 2000, and you have that in the staff report, but I didn't see slides. And so when that changed, the whole process changed. People were outraged. There was a owners group that got organized. There were 700 people that said, we can't have this, we don't want this. And there was a battle, there was a referendum. At the end of the referendum, the community decided in a club essentially that we wanted to maintain an owner application requirement. And I'm having a hard time figuring out is that at the moment that the COVID pandemic was breaking, I think there's an ordinance that was adopted it was introduced, I believe, March 17th, 2000. And I think it was finalized on April 6th, 2020. So when everyone's going into lockdown, that's the most, and maybe it changed earlier, but as far as I know, that's the most change to the ordinance. I can look up the municipal code number 1. It was passed unanimously.
Sorry. What ordinance are you speaking of? Don't mind me interrupting you. Are you talking about Chapter 1649 of this code? We have not made changes to that code.
I can look at, I've got a copy of the ordinance. I can read it, site ordinance. The ordinance right now shows that the last amendment was during. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that wasn't the thing. But there's some point in time, which is inexplicable to me, between 2020, between 2000 and 2020, where the owner application requirement seems to have disappeared.
Okay, it's possible you're referring to the units that council passed in June of 20. There are 4 meetings in June of 2001, 2000, and that was the one that referended. That ordinance that council passed then said it's the owner that comes forward with their own nomination. That ordinance went away because of the referendum. What was left was an ordinance that was in place before that from 1980. That's the one we today.
Let me say it this way. What this community needs is what I believe we have at the federal level and what I believe we have at the state level, and I'm certain we have at the military. And that is, you want the historic nation, you ask for it. And it can't be imposed without your consent. It can't be imposed without your application. So we're talking about decisions presented here and say, well, sure, there are always going to be members of the council who will respect wishes. But that's true. Why don't we memorialize that in the municipal?
Certainly, that's action that the council direct the modification of the ordinance to say exactly what the state does, what the feds do, is not over the objection of the property owner. This doesn't say it right now.
That if you want to be on the
historic registry to ask for it, you want state registry to ask for it, Mills Act treatment.
You can't object.
You,
Oh, sorry.
National Register, property can't listed on the National Register over the objection owner.
That's, yeah.
There's a little bit of nuance there, but.
That's a nice nuance. Fine, be happy with that. I've a lot of people in the community. What we don't, if you're soliciting public feedback, I would offer my public feedback.
Mhm.
I think there should either be an owner application requirement, because what we got right now, it's any person or group, as I understand, can ask for a property to be designated. If I like, for example, with this, I think it'd be acting in faith, but if I like somebody develop a property down the street, I can, just send in the paper, start the process.
Well,
And if
there's-
somebody's investigated, I can stop the development of one of my neighbors.
Right,
But
that's a slippery slope, and it is a cost to submit an application. We haven't received applications except very recently for the cannery site. That's the only one I'm aware of that we've received from somebody. So what I is, the ordinance, we know that ordinance doesn't say everything that it should say, so we know that already, including what happens if it objects to listing. We also know that process right now is free for the people that want to be on the city's register, take advantage of the extra 250 feet of floor area they can get because just on the register, let's see. So we're making it easy for those people that want on the register to move forward with having to compile their own paperwork. If an application fee, that's a lot of application fees that were passed by. If people actually on this that want to be moving.
One thing about the advance, just because I think that's why I wanted to have this meeting, that it's on the city, so we can get something like connected with historic people to talk to. But in presentation, you said you can get free consultation. So is it, if you get on the list, someone will talk to you without your having to hire them for, is that correct?
So the process we have in our city is that if you have category 1, 2, or 3, 4, and you come in and you want to make changes to the exterior, we provide free consultation from our historic preservation consultants. So they're looking at the property, giving recommendations on how to, adjust the wall so you can see where the historic piece was, the new piece was, and to trained eye, you'll see where the changes, that kind of thing. Or
The city would do that no matter what, just to encourage people, period.
yeah, I don't have unlimited money to work on all the houses in Palo Alto for free, but
Front of the house or designated to the whole house, the rear.
So there is typically more flexibility towards the rear. So there is a bit of a focus on what you can see from the kind of look right away, would include side facade, and it depends on the property.
Like it's designated, like I said, there's still back to this, kind of confusion about what makes a house designated. So it's designated just based on front of the house. Once it's designated, applies to the front and rear. That's the whole.
Well, it's designated,
The whole house
Yeah.
designated, but.
It's just the external.
yeah, so the exterior of the property, I don't know, I'm gonna jump in, but the exterior of the property is where, is where city would get involved in looking at what's proposed. Wouldn't look at what's proposed if you're doing anything inside. They don't even go and look at any of those, but we get professional help and we don't charge the customer to look at the exterior changes that appear to be significant. So, choosing to put something in front of your house and it's on our inventory, it will no longer be on the inventory after you put something in front of the house that obliterates the front of the house. But you're sensitively to something at the rear or side, and it is compatible with that home, it's likely to still be eligible for the inventory and the benefits there.
Q&A. Are we done?
No, we're
Thank you.
I actually just wanted to bring something, it has not been discussed over time in official meetings, and that is money. So we had somebody who just completely owns, like you said, it was a beautiful home and it's category 4. So he found with it, he bought a house. He bought a house at a park because everybody the means to maintain an affordable building. Bought a house in 2019, and on my way here, I saw his house to see what's going on. So 2019, we are almost at the end of 2023, so that is a few years later. He's now about to do the painting, and the house is not done. So you think about if you buy a house and you spend 4 years doing the work. Think about the old queen in England. Her taxpayers co-pay the maintenance of her house.
it is a very, very expensive. And I think that we need to remember that property is a home, it's not a museum. And that's why I think it's very democratic for people who think that home is so valuable to be nominated and elevated to be historically significant. And yet I also think once the designation is there, has to be a sunset clause, because we oftentimes forget the wonderful US Postal Office is magnificent. It's going to be there because our federal government, I think our federal government owns, right? And it will always be there. They are not going to change hands tomorrow, or next month. So the next owner comes in, will do different things and all that. But it is very different because our homes are our homes. I don't know how many of you have lived in multiple homes, but I definitely remember after we bought the home, the first thing I thought was, I no longer need to ask my landlord, can I put a picture on the wall? And that is the pride of ownership, right? And that's what we want on our home. And suddenly we have to ask permission. And I changed the window and all that. So I think that remember our home really, it involves money because old homes are really expensive to maintain and everybody has needs. By all means, it's very important that we have different variety. And I think that is why our bottle is just so attractive to so many people, because people hear say, oh, there's so many different varieties. You have a newer and older homes coexisting. But to think about that, a few of them, I promise a neighbor, I will not give out their address. That should speak volumes.
Yeah. Quickly, does the HRB have to vote about these things on the 11th? Because it seems to me like this is premature. There's the question of the owner, which should be visited before talking to owners about like their properties. There's also there's in your last meeting you talked about changing incentives and in the categories and things, and it seems like you should do that before a whole bunch more things in it. And, so you talked in the last meeting about you need more clarity on like what counts as a historic person, counts as a historic event. You know, shouldn't you have that discussion? Say, okay, this is what we're going to count as a historic event. This is what counts as somebody who's historic. You know, define that properly, and then look at the house. So what's the rush? Why don't you like put this hold, make decisions, and come back and look at the house in the light of that? And homeowners will have like right now I have no clue what your criteria are about which is what my house being in under. How do I even do about that? And when are you going to have that discussion? Like after you've looked at my house, or like it seems like you're putting the cart before the.
So have you seen the DPR for your home? Okay, so you know what it says about persons.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not a mystery to you because you've seen the DPR.
Why you think that is important?
We didn't.
Well, why he was important.
In 2000, yeah.
People who down on the same street are equally interesting and important.
So I think is it January 11th? I think that's gonna be a very interesting meeting.
Why not discussion, and then look at the buildings and see if they meet the criteria, and then invite people in to see if they agree on it. It seems like you're really the wrong way around.
We know that the number of people that are just going to say no matter what they read, right? That just don't. So no, I mean, I guess that's just being brutally honest. So we have 27 letters, like the gentleman back here saying, no, thank you. And we'll know what we're going to bring to HRB at that point.
Well, that's assuming the HRB is okay with the idea of going against some wishes. That's not decided at all. That was my point. Is that you
because nothing's decided at this point.
Yeah, so say you should decide all that first, then have these.
Yeah, I have a clarifying question to HRB. Will you be making your recommendations from a historical perspective and the criteria? Or will you also be taking into account the opinion of the household? I think it's a question. Are you I'm not asking how going to vote. I'm just saying you looking at both factors, just historical or historical, and I want to listen. There's a reason why I come.
Looking at, we will be taking the owner's opinion into consideration. But we're hoping, on the other hand, that you all do take the time to read information that's available about your houses and at least contemplate what the advantages might be. And if there really are negatives to this, I know we've talked about resale value, and I think that's a slippery slope. Some of the guys in town could buy anything they want, have category 1s and 2 houses. So, there's pride of ownership. And if that factor, I think that, we will be open-minded, and we are advisory. So I'm sure that we're all learning to go along, and we've not seen all the information on these these houses. So we don't have quite as much background as you do individually. I know how I feel about the ones I've seen. I don't know how I feel about ones I had seen. So I think it might depend on the house, and we felt it was really important to have it on inventory, and they're really negatives. I think we might, it's counsel to go for it. And if we don't really see much value in adding to our inventory, and it's, this house, as far as we're concerned, and the owner doesn't want it, then I think that listen to the owner. So I think that we need to give a process time. I know I have been incredibly impatient about this whole thing. It's been a long time in coming, and I apologize, although I had no control, because it would have been happening not faster if I did. But I think that it's only 2 weeks, for most of these, houses. So we'll soon.
I do have to make this comment that it feels like, I think Amy said, there's a pretty good chance, maybe even definitely, that if we want to be on it, we're not going to have to be on it. And if that really is the case, if you're really sure of that, it feels like a lot of resources have been wasted on a lot of people who are adamantly opposed no matter what. And those resources could have gone to promoting to people who said, hey, actually, I do want to learn more. I want to understand what 250 square feet is about. I do know neighbors that are on this list that said, yeah, I'm kind of interested. And if they had been the target, people who were ambivalent or slightly interested in the targets, then I think resources would have gone better for them. Unless you really are going to have legal power to tell people they have to be on it. And that I don't think is yet.
Well, we have power to weigh, and we have to analyze it first. So we're there. And hopefully at least some people will be open-minded enough to consider what it really means to inventory.
Sorry, you characterize. I mean, that people have all kinds of reasons for not wanting to be us.
I really don't see them, but but you can tell they are, but I personally am blind to them. Sorry.
But I also do think it's for this meeting, we are trying to describe the incentive for people. We get the feedback that people weren't necessarily aware of the potential incentives or what they could be used for. So that's something we were trying to address as part of this thing. Well,
we've run out of
time
to do a very good job of it, but we understand that your opinions and your concerns are more important than us getting information out in a setting like this. So certainly those who are decided you don't want to move forward, please send your letters in. If you would like to have a moment to talk about what it means after you get the paperwork, and call me and email me, and we set up meetings where we can walk through so you understand what the incentives are as they apply to your home in particular.
I also would be very interested in, you think, incentives that work would be. I think I would be very interested in your thoughts in what incentives would be appropriate to motivate people who would be leaning away. Really, nobody's here to take your property rights from you. We understand there's an issue. That's why we're listening to you. And I understand this could have been in a perfect world in a much more logical and reasonable way than it had been done. I can't speak to what happened in the mid-90s, but this is where we are, and we're trying to work through it. And you should express your opinion early and often, but I, for one, really like to hear what would be real for you in terms of getting you to consider put your house on one's inventories.
I'm going to give a little example. I'm not just polar things. I put solar panels on front of my house because that's sunny. Who else we have all these trees. You can put solar panels anywhere you want. They analyze it and they tell you it's the house. One of the houses is really a historical thing that I'm supposed to be doing. So the fear, something like that, I'm not tearing the house, that's not really historical. There isn't a lot of flexibility. Like if there was an enforcement had to do that, I would not be doing solar. It wouldn't be beneficial to my house. So I'm eco person, and the historical guidelines are not modernized. And I'm only giving this examples because I'm trying to say I'm not against historical, but I can't let 18th century alone. There's pollution. And these are an example of a concern that I'm raising to you that is not progressive enough
force reasonable things on a house.
I think we're hearing that clearly tonight, and I don't think any of us have a problem listening to what you have to say.
That's still not allowed.
I'm glad that you raised the question. Each and every one of us, I myself included, like this house because it's absolutely gorgeous, beautiful house and preserves history. Fundamentally, the question, are the incentives aligned to motivate me to want to participate in the program? Right, and I'm going through the list, as I was asking the question around the tax credits, I'm like, well, does it apply, does it apply, it doesn't really apply, like, I don't know. And it doesn't feel aligned to me. So what's my motivation to want to? Look, I've got really old ladies.
Yes.
And like, literally ropes, like this old school. You ask like what would incentives be? Oh, the objective is to maintain the home, to preserve the home. Perhaps there are tax credits, perhaps there are credits that can be provided if I'm to be paying and updating home. Spending my house, I'll be happy with the size of the home, so that's not aligned. So it is valuable for you to reach out to homeowners to understand what are the incentives to be aligned. Because what you want to happen is all of us raise our hand and saying, I want it. The conversations you're having here is I want out, which means that we're not aligned here in conversation. But we all started aligning this house because we love it. We really value, we're all owners that value and want to preserve this home. If you don't want to preserve this home, each of us would have knocked down already. Right?
One of the incentives, which I think you've probably gotten to, is the mill site, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the things about the mill site are important for everybody. One is it's owner application. The second is I think it's 10 years and it's renewable. So if you're looking for concrete, financial things to make people maintain the historicity of their homes, that's a pretty good to do it. They're more complicated from the city's point of view. It's more there's state allocations there. And you can apply for it. As far as Alta doesn't have it, but that would actually be some money on the table. And with regard to sale issue, the 10-year renewal process means that if a new owner doesn't want to renew the mill designation, they don't have to.
I would
You're correct. We might have one.
Before I decide whether I want to be asked. That's the base. I want you guys to work, come up with, have these conversations, come up with the new incentives, make the line. So we're all going, yes, please, I want to be in. And then I want to make a decision. Prior to that, I'm leaning, no, exactly the same thing. I love my house, it's beautiful, it's all wonderful. But I'm scared of you guys taking money from me because that's my retirement actually if I need to leave. And that's, and we have anecdotally Liz are saying,
money from.
Yeah, because my house is my retirement. So I have potentially that's how I could fund my retirement, selling and moving.
How are they gonna take money from you?
Because by the designation that's historic, it's realtors are telling everybody, oh, this is great because it's not correct, and people are paying less. So and that's an unquantifiable.
I can back you on that.
Yeah, but I mean, it's if that is in the air, then not our incentives aligned. There's also the community has this program has a reputation of being a value for the properties. And I think I would like you guys to fix that and then to us and say putting on the register. And if you do fix it with a Mills Act, whatever, I probably told you right now I'm not prepared to do that.
Appreciate your comments. I think one of the things that I learned in my not even year on the ARB so far is these projects take place sometime in what would appear to be an out of order way. The reason for that is because of the priorities and grants and money. So like we said, this has been going on since 1997 to 2001. It's now 22 years later. So we haven't run this process through, unfortunately. It is coming to the fore now, and for multitude of property owners that are engaged in this process, and who knows, maybe have no problem nominated. We will move forward with their houses having this historical designation, because that is time in the process where we are now. Absolutely, it is one of the goals of the Historic Resources Board to address the ordinance. It is something we have talked about at great length and done study sessions on. We realize the incentives are not as compelling as could be. All of this is true. This is the position that we are at now that has taken 22 years of work to get to. If you're an advocate for historic preservation within our community, yes, take your off the list until you are comfortable with it being there because of the incentives. For the rest of the 150 owners, we will move forward with process. Like the California Register and like National Register, if you would like your home to be delisted, you are able to do so.
No,
that's
that's not
that's
what
not
we-
said.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. That's.
I've heard that before. I've
It
heard it in
depends
this
on-
room today.
If your property is registered, there currently is no ordinance that addresses what happens if it is registered and you don't want to be. That said, as a member of the Historic Resources Board, I would be remiss if I did not take the owner's wishes into consideration upon my vote for that specific property. We are members of the community. Not all of us are actually privileged enough to be homeowners in this community. So if are, congratulations. We will advocate for the homes we see have historic merit, and we will do our civic duty in that way.
Is that your opinion or is that the opinion board? Because we're hearing different things.
My opinion as chair is I will take into consideration each property, including any good, bad, or otherwise comment from owner, and I'll make my vote on property as individual on board.
I'd like to. I had to speak from experience working with people with historic homes and that want to preserve them. And a lot of times the incentive are really buried in ordinances and the codes. It's literally somewhat hard to kind of interpret what those might be and what they might, how they benefit you. But some examples might be you aren't listed, you don't have a historic home. It's a historic home, it's not listed, and you do some remodeling in your house, and the officials say, you know, that stairway, that railing has to now be 42 inches high. Well, that doesn't really fit my historic home. I'm sorry, that's the code. It's not going to look, you know, it's not going to look right. Or a lot of times people think they can't place their wood windows with something that looks historic, and it's mostly about appearance. And so there's ways to upgrade your home the way that fit within the confines of the historic building code and the Secretary of Interior standards, kind of guidelines on how to do work. And so I think a lot of times they're just fears that are really unfounded. And so in my experience, most all historic homes that have been restored have always retained, if not exceeded, in the value of native homes, by virtue of the care and I guess I say the attention that it's gotten from owners. And so I would just ask you to, I mean, I'm not here city or anything. I'm just listening to everyone talk through these. A lot of these are I hear all the time, and I have to sort of talk through the process with owners and reassure them. You want to put solar panel on your house, you can do that. If things are removable, you can do that. If something is reversible, you can do that. If you want to do things to your windows that don't, I mean, want to take a Victorian and turn into a modern house. Well, yeah, it's not for you. You know, most of you live in homes that are traditional and historic for a reason. You love the character. You want it. You're there for a reason. And so, think like a high step there, and things that you kind of put up with they're there for, you know, you've kind of learned to accept them. But those might be things that you would have to change out because they don't meet the current code. Whereas with the historic code, you're allowed then to keep those things that are the character of the house and work within a lot of free parameters that just give you a lot of flexibility. And so, you know, before you make that decision, you actually be, you know, act honor to what you're, you know, what's in your best interest. So I just encourage you to think a little bit more about what your conceived notions of what's going to happen, and be a little bit more open to the possibility of what it could be and the benefits that it could provide you. So I just needed to say that as I'm hearing these things, and I just know them to not be correct assumptions. So anyway, that's all I
You're
said.
great. We could have you on the HRB as the.
For bringing that up, we actually have elections coming up this spring. So if you'd like to on the HRB, please submit an application.
I think my bandwidth is
You're restoring houses, aren't you? So you're
but I do think you should talk to the plan department and really understand what those incentives would affect you, whether it's height, it's you know, those square foot limits, housing codes can help you in ways. So I don't think anyone, we're redoing their porch and you have a beautiful, railing that's at 34 inches, want to put in a 42-inch high railing and completely, disrupt the appearance of your house. And so there's just things that you have to kind of realize are there for your use, that are there to help benefit you as owner of a home. Plus, if the Mills Act is adopted, it can be a huge taxing. And so if anything, I would encourage the city, go to the city and say, get the Mills Act going, because we want to use it. Yeah, get the Mills Act.
He doesn't want to put it's money where his mouth is.
Well,
They've rejected
it.
It's expensive them to do it.
I think it's expensive much for us. There's been concerns expressed about money to the school district, this kind of, so it's more of a complicated issue, but certainly I'm happy to send you the Mills Act tailored pilot program that's been published in our ARB agendas in the past, public information, if you want to see what the HRB was considering and would like to move forward.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
okay. Okay.
Well, their concern is that the money cannibalizing the school.
It's about taxes being diverted from some things into other things. Right. Yeah, so we'll really have time because we're out of time now. We're to take this thing further to look in depth about incentives and such. And so, but we'll put the PowerPoint online. There's slides we haven't presented, but it was valuable to spent to clarify some things that were very of concern to this group. So we're glad we spent them. And like that, if you want to talk about reaching out to us, we're here for you, and we can have individual conversations about
And
your
before we leave, thank you for coming here.
How do we contact you to do this?
Can send an email, amy.french@cityofpaloalto.org. You're welcome to do amy.french. So I'm the HB staff liaison, and I'm the City of Palo, a.french@cityofpaloalto.org. And reach out if you don't have your DPR form, the form that was prepared in 2000. I can send that to. I can send you a pull report. I can send you other things. This is a Department of Parks and Recreation. It's a California State Department, and that was the forms that were used in 1997 to describe your property and why eligible.
Sorry.
City Hall, you said not to click or anything. In City Hall.
I work for the planning department.
Okay.
So if you want to visit me in person, probably should email me to set that up because I'm not my office 24/7.
So I wanted to ask, if you scan this card, does that bring up your information too, your contact information?
It's a web page that we shared earlier, the Renaissance Survey web page. And so we'll show it now. You'll see if you use that.
Yeah. Yeah, many thanks to everyone for coming tonight.
Thank you so much. Thank you.